This is the New Yorker magazine dated 5th of July 1993. It's significant because of a cartoon drawn by Peter Steiner. Where is it? Ah yes, here we are, page 61. On the internet, nobody knows you're a dog. Nestled amongst a story about police corruption, this cartoon would become one of the most iconic in the world. Shout out to SqSp for sponsoring. Back in these days, cartoonists would produce portfolios of panels, then walk from Collier's to the Saturday Evening Post and then to the New Yorker, meeting each editor to see if they wanted to purchase the artwork for their next issue. On this occasion, in the summer of 1993, the then editor-in-chief, a Brit, Tina Brown, along with cartoon editor Lee Lorenz, felt this cartoon was perfect. For Steiner, it was actually a throwaway cartoon, and he has since admitted to having no real interest in the internet at the time. It was simply a make-up-a-caption item to which he attached no profound meaning. In fact, with most people even unaware of the internet themselves at the time, being mainly used for academic use, the cartoon didn't make much of an impact upon its publishing at all. But the magazine was routinely filled with cartoons. It would be rare for one to have any kind of profound impact on society. But, as time went on, it became a significant talking point and perhaps one of the first and indeed greatest memes of our time. Peter Steiner was born in 1940 in Cincinnati, Ohio. He attended the University of Miami, earning a bachelor's degree before serving in the US Army and earning an MA and PhD in German literature from the University of Pittsburgh. He then went on to become a professor of German literature at Dickinson College in Carlisle, Pennsylvania for 8 years before becoming a cartoonist, artist, and novelist. On his own website, Steiner writes that when he was 5 or 6, he found a copy of his parents' book, The Lonely Ones by William Steig, and was instantly mesmerised, setting him out on a path that would always lead to this career. He was first published in The New Yorker in 1979 and then The Washington Times in 1983, creating daily cartoons relevant to the news at the time. All of Steiner's cartoons had a particular type of witty humour that helped shine a light on contemporary matters in a more whimsical light than the editorial sections might themselves. Of course, with the rise of the internet in the 90s and the World Wide Web infiltrating households in 93, or at least starting to, Steiner felt he had something to say. He'd actually produced various cartoons on the subject of computers, but On the Internet Nobody Knows You're a Dog struck a chord, and although it wasn't instant, the wider media began to use the catchphrase within only a month or two. The first copy I can find of the cartoon being duplicated was actually in the same month. On the 20th of July 1993, various syndicated publications, including Newsday, printed the picture alongside an information highway article, where a reporter hitches a ride on the said highway, essentially giving the lowdown on where technology has been and where it is headed. From there it would pop up in various other articles discussing this new highway of information and opportunity. For a while it was seemingly used as an introduction of sorts to explain what this new thing was. Surely you've heard of the internet? Almost certainly you had not heard of it a year ago. In that span, it has gone from an unheralded region of cyberspace to topical and stylish locale, the kind of place that shows up in a New Yorker cartoon. A canine hacker says, on the internet, nobody knows you're a dog. A light-hearted, whimsical way to lure in technophobes. On the 6th of December, Time magazine ran an article on the first nation in cyberspace talking about how the internet was making waves globally, but on the second page of that article it said, "It's the internet boom," says network activist Mitch Kapor, who thinks the true sign that popular interest has reached critical mass came this summer when the New Yorker printed a cartoon showing 2 computer-savvy canines with the caption, "On the internet, nobody knows you're a dog." There had since been other cartoons about the internet, but this one really seemed to capture the mood at the time. This mention in Time magazine by the founder of Lotus Software seemingly caused the cartoon to spread everywhere else. It was an ignition moment. And this didn't let up the following year, or the following year, or the next. It was even featured on page 93 of Bill Gates' book, The Road Ahead. This phrase and this imagery had apparently encapsulated this new technology. But the question is, why? On the 14th of December 2000, the New York Times ran an article titled "Cartoon Captures Spirit of the Internet." The article starts, "By now, it's almost an old saying. On the internet, nobody knows you're a dog." You can count on seeing it at the start of plenty of articles on internet privacy and anonymity. By this point, 7 years on, people had a better grasp of the internet, and the cartoon was now used more appropriately regarding trust issues around the web. But this article, by Glenn Fleischman, was actually an interview with Peter Steiner himself in a quest to find out how deep this rabbit hole went. "I feel a little like the person who invented the smiley face," quips Steiner. The cartoon didn't receive much attention at the time, but interest has grown over the last 7 years and the saying has become practically an industry of its own. In fact, at that time, the cartoon was the most reproduced from The New Yorker and was available on t-shirts, in framed prints, among other merchandise, and a quick search on Google yielded 103,000 matches, and it was working its way into lots of places. Java programming examples. I mean, this simple dog server attempts to detect whether you are indeed a dog. In fact, by this point, it had even inspired a play, Nobody Knows I'm a Dog, by Alan David Perkins. A story about chat room participants who were all pretending to be something or someone they're not. The cartoon had certainly struck a chord, and whether Steiner intended it or not, people were extracting their own meaning. And if you'd like to strike a chord with your customers, you should probably check out sponsor, Squarespace. Squarespace not only allows you to set up a site in minutes using an array of templates or its blueprint AI tools, but it also takes care of a wealth of usually time-consuming components. This includes handling search engine optimization and helping ensure your site ranks for the keywords that matter to you. Creating your content is one thing, but having it formatted and presented in a way that's pleasing for both visitors and search engines is something else. Once you're live, the comprehensive analytics suite gives you insights to tweak and build upon your pages where necessary. Head to squarespace.com to get started, then squarespace.com/nostalgianerd to get 10% off a website or domain. You see, this cartoon wasn't simply striking a nerve with our fears. The fact that anyone could be lurking on this new communication network, striking up conversations with your family, your friends, your children, and pretending to be someone they're not, it was also providing a means of liberation. In a world chock-a-block with assumptions, stigmas, and stereotypes, you could rock up and be whoever you wanted to be. This didn't mean that you could simply redefine yourself. It also meant that you were free to perform the boldest action of them all, simply being yourself in your truest form. People were discovering internet anonymity and the freedoms it gave us. A study completed in the year 2000 by Morahan, Martin and Shoemaker on compulsive or troublesome internet use discusses this phenomenon, suggesting the ability to represent oneself behind the mask of a computer screen may be part of a compulsion to go online. This phrase may be taken to mean that cyberspace will be liberatory because gender, race, age, looks or even dogness are potentially absent or alternatively fabricated or exaggerated with unchecked creative license for a multitude of purposes, both legal and illegal, and likewise moral and amoral. This was also portrayed in media at the time. Films such as You've Got Mail, where the main characters fall in love through the anonymity of the internet, or The Net, where Sandra Bullock goes on the run from an unknown enemy after stumbling across government secrets, conveys both the excitement and fear of this new technology. What Peter Steiner did was manage to capture all of this in a single frame before the vast majority of people were even aware of what the internet was, and for this reason it's absolutely priceless. In a 1995 interview with PBS, Rick Adams, one of the developers of the web's precursor, ARPANET, stated, "The fact that the New Yorker could use the word internet as the punchline in a cartoon was to me the defining popularization of the internet." It's unlikely to be a coincidence that Steiner almost seemed to draw comparisons between his career and the internet. People treat cartoons as though they come from somewhere out in space. Whenever you see articles or books, they name the author. When you see a cartoon, you see the place it appeared in. Readers may see the signature in the cartoon, but remember and cite only the publication. Something only proved by Rick Adams's earlier statement. For Steiner and so many other creatives, his work was almost as anonymous as random people on the net. And maybe that's also why, when it came to the internet, he was ahead of the curve, even though he wasn't particularly interested in it at all. I did the drawing of these dogs at the computer like one of those make-up-a-caption contests. There wasn't any profound tapping into the zeitgeist. I guess, though, when you tap into the zeitgeist, you don't necessarily know you're doing it. By now it's almost an old saying, on the internet nobody knows you're a dog. The sentence, which originated as a caption, has slipped into the public consciousness, leaving its source behind, so it's just as accurate to say that on the internet, nobody knows that you coined a phrase. And this is true even today. Famous memes, famous sayings, famous posts are all copied and pasted without any reference to the original source. What's more, no one really cares what the original source was. In 2012, Steiner would update the cartoon with a segment for the New Yorker's Cartoons of the Year 2012 collection. In this spread, he not only named the dogs, Ricky and Sadie, with Sadie being the one who actually came up with the phrase, he also created an entire life of them, which sadly ended in them parting ways. In the Cartoons of the Year 2015, the New Yorker published an incomplete history of the internet, which started with the famous dogs and also ended with a new pair, this time illustrated by Kamran Hafiz and capturing the changes that had occurred in the preceding 22 years. Remember when, on the internet, nobody knew who you were? This wasn't long after Edward Snowden exposed information that left debates over mass surveillance, government secrecy, and just how complicit private enterprise is in exchanging our data with our governments. In 22 years, we had gone from an internet where anyone could log on and be anyone, with not even ISPs being able to track who was doing what, to an almost 1984 internet, where sure, you could create a random email account and set up anonymous social media accounts, but your data, your movements were almost certainly being tracked somehow and somewhere. In some cases on the internet, nobody knows you're a dog is still very true, but some server somewhere definitely knows you're not a dog. It knows your name is Peter Lee, it knows you live in Norwich, and it knows you have a cat called Spencer. In 2013, Glenn Fleischman, then editor and publisher of The Magazine, updated his interview with Peter Steiner. By this point, Steiner had moved away from creating cartoons, focusing on writing novels, including various crime mysteries. But even at this point, he was well aware of the tinge the cartoon had taken, summing it up like this: "Everyone knows you're a dog. Everyone is a dog." Since the cartoon was first published, he estimates that he had probably received $250,000 in royalties, receiving a 50-50 split with the New Yorker, which, sure, it's a lot, but remember this is spread out over 2 decades. The New Yorker actually accepted 421 cartoons from Steiner over the years, but none made as much impact as this one. As Adam Clayton Powell III, Vice President for Technology at the Freedom Forum, quoted in the New York Times, the cartoon was the perfect one-line summary printed at just the right moment. The original signed artwork though, despite originally being sold by the New Yorker for a few $100s, went on to become one of the most famous cartoons ever. Hardly surprising then that it sold for $175,000 at a heritage auction sale on the 6th of October 2023, almost as much as the royalties Steiner had amassed. $140,000. The sale included an online conversation with Steiner himself, beforehand.
You know, I had a revelation about this cartoon this morning. I realized that cartoon is autobiographical and that it's about being an imposter or feeling like an imposter. It wasn't about the internet at all. It was about my sense that I'm getting away with something.
Pretty crazy that after 30 years, Steiner would finally realize that the cartoon was in fact simply about having imposter syndrome.
What were you getting away with?
Well, being a cartoonist for one thing, you know, and I've had several checkered careers, and in every one I felt like a bit of a fraud. You know, I think many people have that syndrome, you know, the sense that you don't really... Exactly, yeah.
Something that many of us can definitely relate to, especially in the creative field. Back in 2000, when the New York Times asked Steiner if people would still be citing his cartoon in 50 years, he replied, "Isn't that horrifying to think that's the one thing I'll be remembered for?" But it's not just being remembered for a cartoon, it's being remembered for a symbol that is even more important to the web today as it was back then. Our freedoms, our internet privacy are continually at stake, and it helped spark many debates and conversations since, and will continue to do so. Plus, it's art. Everyone who sees it will interpret something different, even if it is just a cartoon. A $175,000 cartoon.
So having talked to people over time, again and again about it, I have come to learn that it's, at least to some people, it's a very important cartoon.
I always find it wild that most of the people I know who suffer from imposter syndrome are actually the most talented people I've ever met. Goes to show, if you feel like an imposter, just keep going. Until next time, I've been Nostalgia Nerd. Toodaloo.